This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
On this week's programme, we meet up with our new Commissioner for the Environment to find out about her priorities.
First and top priority was and is still agamas, because agamas touches upon various issues. It's the management of a Natura 2000 site.
And you'll need to be quick if you'd like to be an ambassador in Cyprus for a day.
They'll be pretty much going through the agenda of the ambassadors for the whole day.
Joining us on this week's programme is our new Commissioner for the Environment. It's a huge job here in Cyprus because there are so many different aspects that have to be dealt with. Very warm welcome to an old friend of mine, Antonia Theodosiou. Antonia, can we start with your priorities? Because it's a new position for you. You are an architect. I know you have a long-standing connection to the Agamas Peninsula, which has been in the news very much recently. So where do you start? How do you prioritise what, as Commissioner of the Environment, you need to do?
Well, before agreeing to take this position, I had read the governance priorities of Nikos Christodoulidis. And I need to say here that I agreed with all that there is. It's in front of me to choose my priorities and check what I can succeed within the time I'm going to be here. The other thing I would like to say is that after having the post, I received my terms of working here. And I can propose changes to the laws and regulations, make proposals to the ministries and sub-ministries, and I can give my views and advice to the parliamentary committees that invite me. For example, to the Environmental Committee of the Parliament, I'm hosted every week. Every Wednesday is booked for the Parliament's committee, and it is very important. So coming exactly to you, I wanted to give you the framework, okay? Coming to my priorities, of course, coming here, my first and top priority was and is still agamas, because agamas touches upon various issues. It's the management of a Natura 2000 site. Part of it has been declared as a national state park, and there are works going on there. And by the time I had arrived to this post, we started with meetings. The first meeting that took place was with environmental NGOs and the services, and it referred to recommendations how to improve the state of the first phase of the roads that have started being constructed. I have participated, though, also in other meetings where only the services are present. And we've started reviewing the works that are planned to take place after this first phase. And I need to say it's a very overloaded procedure, because there are different views, and my views are pretty well known because I had publicized them before coming here. For example, I'm pretty against having movement of private cars and motorrads in the Agamas area. I'm in favor of having small electric buses for people that need to move around. With this case, you don't need to have the other phases of constructing parking places. And you wouldn't have problems in arguing with the people how many parking places are inside the National Forest Park, and that people that cannot enter any longer because they are full or they are booked up. And you can control easier, you can adapt to the various time of the year how many visitors you want to have. Otherwise, with the private cars, it will be very difficult. And one major issue is also the hunters. Most of the people, they haven't even realized yet that in the National Forest Park you are allowed to hunt. And there was no thought about it so far that something needs to be done about this, and this is a major issue. This is why the hunters, they come out and they say protect the Natura 2000 sites, because we want to hunt in them, not only in agamas. So anyway, from agamas, moving from agamas to all the Natura 2000 sites in Cyprus, I would like to contribute to the present regulations and practices in how to move quicker ahead with this and start managing these sites. With first priority, the managing of the wildlife. Of course, in these areas, you can also have the presence of people, but the priority should be the management and the protection of the wildlife.
The biodiversity. The problem, it seems to me, Antonia, is that in almost all these cases, you have to deal not with one organisation or authority that has the power to implement things. They have to then confer with 4 or 5 other departments. So by the time they get round to actually doing anything, if they can agree on it, it's often too late.
Mm-hmm. True, because during the period that I was director of the management plan of the sustainable development of the agamas, including the villages, of course, I had to deal with approximately 20 governmental services, and then another maybe 30 NGOs with which I communicated, and then the district office of Paphos. It was a very turbulent period. But I managed at the end to come up with a plan for the sustainable development of the area, with top priority, of course, the sustainable development of the villages and the protection of nature, which is in the form of a biosphere reserve. And this is a UNESCO development, the biosphere reserves, which include also villages within them, but they have zoning. And that is the zone of the wildlife where you can do nothing. And then you have the zoning of other developments such as farming, agricultural development, and then you have touristic zones. But this is all in the context of a sustainable development and management. And this is an issue I want to touch upon, that at present, our regulations for creating and managing sites, we have only the laws of the forestry department for national state forest, and they call them national state parks. And then we have the regulations of the EU, of the Acquis Communautaire, that are the Natura 2000 sites. We don't have the specific and concrete laws in our law system, the regulations of the IUCN, the International Union of Conservation of Nature. And I want to elaborate on this and change the laws in this direction so that we can have one authority, the authority of national parks. Of course, in this authority, you can include the services, you can include people, but then there is one body, which is the body of the national park. Now, in the areas of national state forests, the president of a managerial committee is always the forestry department, and then you have all the services in there again. And
it gets muddled.
Yes. Okay.
Do you think you'll be able to do that? To create a single authority? Have you got the authority to bring this about?
Because I don't have the authority to develop it, but I have the possibility of putting forward changes in our regulations and law system.
Which will then be what? Ratified by Parliament or the Cabinet?
The Cabinet, the Parliament, it depends on the proposals I'm going to put forward. And I'm really willing to do so after an evolution period where I'm going to come up with foreign consultants of the IUCN to check on this issue and have seminars for the services, for the politicians, to tell the difference of a protected area of the IUCN and the protected area in our national law system. But by then, because I know it might take time, by then we do have the UNESCO criteria of the biosphere reserves, which we can adopt and prepare ourselves for the next step. And I'm really willing to do so. The same goes because everybody's saying about green communities. And it sounds nice, or smart communities. There are various contexts. But the green procedure, the green agenda of the EU talks about climate neutral communities. And I think it's also an opportunity I want to use in a good sense, that we are going to have in the near future the complexes of communities, complexes also of the municipalities. But for me, it's very important the communities, and I would like to elaborate with these complexes of communities to create the climate neutral communities, which is also an aim and a target of Europe within this green transition. But we need to start preparing ourselves for this. So the way forward for me is to collaborate with existing mechanisms, because as a person or as an office here, at present, I'm only with one scientific collaborator, and the maximum I could get here is 3. So it's very difficult for me to manage things on my own. So I need to collaborate, and I've already agreed with the Cyprus Energy Agency that is being, in this period, they are working, they are elaborating on the strategy to have the first stage of the climate neutral complexes of communities by 2030, which would minimize their carbon footprint by 55%, and by 2050 to have the 100% climate neutral communities. It's very important, this context of climate neutralism, because it deals also with the environment.
Well, you're getting a bit of assistance maybe from the government plans for rolling out photovoltaics, for example. I mean, that will assist in these sort of things. But your remit includes so many other things. So can we move on to the other things that come under your authority and that you'd like to see your ability to change things for the better?
This is why I have moved from Makamas to the laws and regulations about national parks, to the biosphere reserves, and then to the climate neutral communities, because the climate neutral communities deals with all aspects of our lives. It's energy, it's not only environment, it's energy, it's management of waste, it's the management of our cultural heritage.
Let's talk about that. That's how I first got to know you. You are an architect. And I weep every time I walk or drive round the older areas of our towns and see our beautiful ancient mud brick buildings being destroyed by the weather we're having. And nobody seems to care. They should be listed. If you go to any village, for example, in the UK, almost every second or third house is grade 2 listed. Now, it doesn't mean you can't do things to it. It just means it must be preserved. Why don't we do that here?
Well, there was a huge effort done in 1990, let's say, starting from 1990, that is being now slower developed in nowadays. We have 2 aspects of saving our cultural heritage. The one aspect are the listed houses that are being listed by the Town Planning and Housing Department, and the other type are the ancient monuments that are being declared as such by the Archaeological Department in Cyprus. And the Town Planning and Housing Department has the authority and the ability to declare areas with listed houses, which is very important. Check on Omodos, for example. And then there is also the possibility of a private owner whose property hasn't been listed to go and request the listing of a private house.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm always amazed at the number of private owners here who don't know that if they do list their building, and of course it's got to be a building that's worth listing, which will be decided by the relevant authority, that they can get considerable financial help to restore and renovate it. Mm-hmm. Because in my experience, in the area I live in, Nicosia, there are lots of old houses, and it seems that the owners have actually physically said, no, we don't want it listed. They leave it to fall down, and then they sell the plot of land to be developed.
Yes, there is a misunderstanding, or there is a lack of knowledge in this field. Because after having an area in a core of, for example, of a city or in a core of a village, having been as a listed area, let's say.
I think they call it a preservation area, don't they?
Yes, thank you. Even if a house collapses, if a house has been listed and it collapses, you cannot build something else besides what has collapsed. And most people don't know this, okay? Because some houses do collapse, or some other houses they are intentionally knocked down, and then they stay as empty plots in a core of an area with listed houses because they cannot build something new. This used to happen before in former days, but not any longer. Our problem is not this today, but is to accelerate the process of having more areas as a preservation areas, to demotivate owners to let their houses collapse or demolish them. It is true what you mentioned before, that also the incentives of preserving these houses, which are very high. I need to tell you that I did a study in former days 2 years ago, and they are the best in Europe regarding the amount of money people get to preserve their houses, and also other incentives such as tax relaxation, etc., etc. But they are not very well known to a lot of people. After the crisis of 2013, though, the amount of people that turn to what they have inherited from their grandparents or their parents, out of need, out of necessity, they started renovating with taking advantage of these incentives of old houses for which they never cared before, because they needed the money. And if you go and build something new, nobody will care about you. Or let's say the schemes that exist for helping people to build a house are very scarce.
But it's very sad. You've just hit the nail on the head by saying that they only did it because they needed to financially.
Yeah.
What bothers me is how very few Cypriots seem to walk around the old areas of our towns. They are full of tourists admiring the atmosphere of the old days. And it seems to pass us by.
Well, I wouldn't agree totally with you, because it's a lot of Cypriots, the ones that haven't inherited the house, they really check on how to buy an old house. They are a little bit discouraged by the procedure. It takes long to get a permit, and it takes long and it's a bit expensive to renovate. But still the incentives are much better, are very attractive, because they are really high.
Is there anything that as Commissioner you can do again to maybe simplify some of this so that more people not only hear about it but think, I should do this?
As a Commissioner, I thought a little bit more global, and I do have in 2 weeks a meeting with the Minister of Education, because I would like to promote a lesson for natural building with natural
You're a dry stone
materials.
Yeah, you're a dry stone wall expert. I know that.
Also for mud houses.
We do still have the people who can make mud brick, don't we? And it's probably one of the safest earthquake-resistant materials, as well as being one that reduces your energy bills, because those thick walls, well, they're insulated, aren't they?
Yes. I turned to the Education Ministry because it was one of my aims before I became a commissioner, was these natural materials. Of course, the dry stone interests me more to combat also the climate change and the desertification of the land. But referring to the mud bricks, I am a member of the International Committee for Earth Architecture. I appreciate the earth for building purposes, not only because of the criteria of energy, but also you don't need to do huge extraction of stones, for example, or of other materials to produce. You don't need to produce it. It's a material that needs the sun to dry and it needs labor to build. So it's a material that was used before also in Cyprus a lot, and now we don't appreciate it a lot because we see the old houses collapsing and we don't consider that they are maybe for 100 years they have been abandoned. Abandon a concrete house and let's see how it looks like after 100 years.
Well, not even 100 years. Look at the collapsing balconies, but don't let's start on that.
Yes, so I want to promote this through the Ministry of Education. I want to promote the natural building techniques through the Ministry of Education in collaboration also with the unit of Education for Environment. And I'm really looking forward to it. And through these lessons, we can also teach people about, not only in schools, about the value of old houses as units, but also as neighborhoods, because it's not only the materials, it's not only the style and the architectural details, it is also a way of living. The way we live in the modern areas of our towns, we have a garden around and we don't meet the neighbor, or we live in block of flats. So also the society bonds have been changed through the contemporary architecture.
Yeah, that's very true. One last question for you, and it was in the newspapers, I think, last week, and that is the discussions going on about what should be done with that huge area in Engomi Makedonidisa that used to be the state fair, because there are some departments that want to make it into a research and a high-tech something, but there are an awful lot of people from around that area who want it to be a green space. And I don't know your thought on it. I think we don't have enough green spaces in Cyprus, particularly within our towns and cities, where when we look at the temperatures we're getting in the summer, green spaces and trees can reduce that temperature.
Yes, we are very low at the percentage of green spaces in our cities and villages as well, because we don't speak about the surrounding, we speak about the neighborhoods we live in. And I think that if not all, the greatest percentage of the area there needs to be a park, needs to be green. This is my view, and this was my view also before, because I was always active in the society, and having yet this post, it's an advantage that I know the topics. I need to tell you also that during my second week here, I have co-organized with the Department of Environment a very big event, let's say, of 3 days, having in Cyprus the special rapporteur of the Aarhus Convention. The Aarhus Convention is a convention of UNECE, but the 2 pillars of the 3 of the Aarhus Convention have become also acquis communautaire. It deals with the rights of the civil society in democratic countries, of course, which is access to information, access to effective participation, and access to justice. The 2 first pillars, let's say, they run not so smooth, but they do run in Cyprus. The 3rd pillar, which is not European acquis yet, is up to the countries members of the Aarhus what to do with this. And this is also valid for the European Union countries. So we had this special rapporteur who wanted to investigate in Cyprus what happens with NGOs and also individuals who are persecuted in their countries for their actions and activism regarding environmental topics, including also the saving of our cultural heritage. And it was very interesting. During the mornings, the 3 mornings, the special rapporteur was here. He saw the governmental bodies, he saw lawyers, He saw the court, let's say, society, and in the afternoon he saw individually all NGOs, which were more than 50s. Also initiatives of people for saving, for example, an initiative for saving the Pedieos River, an initiative against the asphalt. So it was amazing. It was really a democracy procedure. And on the third day, we invited the lawyers of the NGOs that have cases at court for defending the environment and also the quality of life. And we saw cases there, for example, for the high-rise buildings in Limassol. There are people that used the lawyers, in a good sense, of course, they have hired lawyers to go against the decisions of the town planning department in allowing such high buildings, which are against their quality of life. We had cases of the Friends of Agamas that are dealing with Agamas cases. And these lawyers, we had all 6 lawyers, dealing each one of them with 2 cases, is that they presented how difficult it is for the NGOs and the individuals to access the justice system.
Well, it's difficult for everybody. It takes far too long here, doesn't it? We're going to have to stop this here because we're out of time, Antonia. I'm sure we will talk again, but I can see your enthusiasm for the undertaking that you now have in front of you, and I'm pretty sure if anybody can do it, you can. Many thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Rosie. Thanks a lot.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
There are just 2 days left if you would like to become an ambassador in Cyprus for a day. What on earth am I talking about? Well, George Andriodis from the Netherlands Embassy joins us to explain. So, George, fire away.
For the 3rd year in a row, the EU female-led foreign missions in Cyprus, which are 8 in number, bring to the women on the island the unique opportunity to work with a female diplomat for a whole day. So the initiative will take place during the first week of March, from the 4th to the 11th of March, where each selected participant will get 1 day on which to carry out their internship. The initiative aims to motivate women to actively participate in politics, current affairs, international relations, become more involved in positive societal changes, and of course, one of the main issues towards a positive change is also the issue of gender equality and equal representation for women in public offices. So the eligible participants are all young women living in Cyprus aged between 18 and 35. To apply, the participants are invited to share a 1-minute long video, a motivational video in which they will explain why they want to participate in the campaign and what interests them in relation to international affairs, as well as what's their take on the fight for gender equality. They can send the video with a direct message to the social media page of our campaign called Ambassador in CY for a Day. The campaign is organized in the context of the International Women's Rights Day, which is commemorated every year on March 8th. Now, the embassies that are organizing the event are the Embassy of the Netherlands, the French Embassy, the Embassy of Austria, the German Embassy, the Embassy of Italy, Portugal, Hungary, and the European Commission office in Cyprus.
If there are 8 embassies, George, does that mean you're going to choose 8 women, 1 for each embassy?
That's correct. So the winners of the competition, it's going to be a selection process between the embassies for 8 winners, and then the winners will be paired with each ambassador. Then, depending on the results, each embassy will be picking up their winner and decide together on which date they should carry out the internship.
So it is just for a day, the internship, yes? They don't have to take a week off work?
No, they don't have to take a week off from their work or the university, and it's also a full-on day involving an actual day with an ambassador. That means basically being present in bilateral meetings with Cypriot stakeholders or being present in meetings, also getting the chance to voice their opinion on a few things. They'll be pretty much going through the agenda of the ambassador for the whole day.
Okay, if people go to Ambassador in CY for a day on Facebook, they'll find all the details there. And as I said at the beginning, just 2 days left to make your video and send it in. George Andriodi, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, Rosie, for having me.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.